The city was asleep when it began. Or maybe it had already died, unnoticed. A faint, unnatural quiet had settled like a heavy fog, swallowing the usual hum of life. No honking horns, no distant sirens, no voices calling out. Only an eerie silence that clung to the streets like a shroud. Alex had been on a routine night shift when the first call came through. The hospital suddenly flooded with patients exhibiting strange symptoms. Fever, aggression, confusion, then violence. The paramedic grabbed their bag and raced out into a city they barely recognized anymore. The sky was bruised with dark clouds, the streetlights flickering, shadows twisting like ghosts. As Alex moved through the maze of streets, the world around them slipped into chaos. People weren't just sick. They were something else. Their eyes were empty, glassy, reflecting hunger and something far darker. The snarls echoed off the crumbling walls, growing louder with each step. Alex's heart pounded against ribs like a warning drum. They kept their breathing steady, focusing on one task: survive. Suddenly, a figure lunged from an alley, a man, or what used to be one, skin torn and bleeding, teeth bared in a grotesque grin. Alex dodged, barely, feeling a cold swipe of death brush past their arm. The man collapsed, twitching on the pavement, eyes rolling back. The infection had turned them into a predator, mindless and merciless. Alex sprinted, clutching a makeshift weapon, a length of pipe found near a dumpster, knowing it was only a matter of time before the horde overwhelmed them. Around the corner, shattered glass glittered beneath a flickering neon sign. A scream pierced the night: someone caught, someone lost. The city had fallen. Not in days or weeks, but in hours. Out of breath and heart racing, Alex slipped into a narrow alley and collapsed against the cold brick. They could hear footsteps pounding closer. Panic clawed at their throat, but Alex forced calm. A voice, hoarse and desperate, called out from the shadows. "Hey! Over here!" Cautiously, Alex peered into the darkness. A small group emerged, faces smeared with grime and fear, a woman clutching a rifle, a young man with a bandaged arm, an older man scanning the street with tired eyes. "We're heading out. Safe zones to the north. If it's real." The woman's voice was sharp, brittle with exhaustion. Alex nodded, swallowing their fear. Staying meant death. The group moved as one, shadows slipping past abandoned cars and burned-out buildings. Everywhere, the undead lurked, silent but deadly. A single misstep could mean becoming one of them. As they crept along the cracked pavement, the street suddenly exploded with a terrifying roar. A massive horde spilled out from a subway entrance, shambling toward them like a tidal wave of decay and hunger. The group scattered, running for their lives. Alex's lungs burned, muscles screamed in protest, but they didn't dare stop. Somewhere behind, a scream was cut short. Breathless and bleeding from a graze on their leg, Alex stumbled into an empty storefront, heart hammering. For a moment, they allowed themselves to believe they were alone. Then, a faint shuffling sound, closer. Gripping the pipe tight, Alex turned, ready to fight for every second. The door burst open. A figure stumbled in, eyes wild, hands reaching. Alex swung hard. The creature collapsed, twitching. Silence. No time to rest, Alex whispered, voice shaking. "We have to move." Gathering themselves, they ran back to the group's last known position. Only two remained, the woman with the rifle and the young man. "We lost some," the woman said grimly, loading her gun with practiced efficiency. "We can't stay here." Alex's gaze hardened. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was war. "Where do we go?" Alex asked. "North. There's a rumored safe zone. Military might be holding it together." The three survivors pressed on, navigating the ruined cityscape with caution. Empty storefronts, graffiti scrawled with desperate messages, overturned cars, this was a world gone mad. Radio static crackled faintly in the distance, a ghostly whisper of normalcy that made Alex's stomach twist. Was someone out there? Or was it a trap, drawing the living into the dead's jaws? Night stretched endlessly. The city that once pulsed with life had become a tomb. Yet, amidst the despair, a fragile spark remained, the will to fight, to survive, to reclaim a future. Alex glanced at their companions. Their eyes reflected the same fierce determination. Tomorrow, they would keep moving. Tomorrow, they would fight. Because if humanity was going to fall, it wouldn't be without a fight. The sun had barely risen when Alex, the woman with the rifle, her name was Maya, and the young man, Jake, found themselves on a cracked highway stretching into a desolate horizon. The city was a distant memory now, swallowed by smoke and silence. They moved cautiously, eyes sharp for any sign of danger. The undead could appear anywhere, behind a rusted car door, inside an abandoned gas station, or simply emerging from the weeds that had begun to reclaim the roadside. But the living were just as dangerous. Fear had twisted some survivors into predators, willing to kill for supplies or shelter. Alex scanned the empty landscape, nerves taut like a wire. We should find others. Strength in numbers. Maya shook her head. Not everyone's trustworthy. Some people do worse than the dead. Jake, clutching a battered backpack, hesitated. But we can't make it alone. If that safe zone exists, we need allies. They pressed forward, the miles stretching endlessly. The silence around them was broken only by the crunch of boots on gravel and the distant caw of crows. Suddenly, Maya raised her hand, a signal to stop. From behind a thicket, a figure emerged, a middle-aged man with a weathered face and a hunting rifle slung over his shoulder. His eyes darted nervously. I heard gunfire, he said. Thought someone might be out here. Alex stepped forward. We're heading north, to the safe zone. The man studied them before nodding slowly. Name's Harris. I lost my family a week ago. I'm with you. They moved together now, a tentative group bound by necessity. Hours passed with no sign of the undead, too quiet, maybe too quiet. Alex's instincts screamed unease. Without warning, a guttural growl shattered the stillness. From the treeline, a shambling figure stumbled into view, eyes vacant but deadly. Maya raised her rifle and fired. The bullet struck true, the creature collapsed. More appeared, a small pack of the infected drawn to the noise. Run! Alex shouted. They sprinted toward a dilapidated gas station. Inside, they barricaded the door with overturned shelves. Heavy breaths filled the cramped space. Jake's hand trembled as he checked a small wound on his arm. We can't keep running forever, Maya said, voice low but steady. We need a plan. Alex nodded. Agreed. But first, we need to trust each other. Trust was a fragile thing, shattered too easily in a world gone mad. That night, as shadows deepened outside, the group huddled around a small fire. Harris shared stories of his time in the military reserves, offering knowledge about survival tactics and combat. Jake listened intently, his fears slowly giving way to determination. But tension simmered beneath the surface. I don't like how you look at me, Jake muttered to Alex. Alex met his gaze. Why not? Because you're different. You are a paramedic, not a fighter. How do I know you won't crack when it counts? Alex swallowed hard, anger flickering. I've seen death up close. I know what it takes. Maya intervened. Enough. We need each other, or we're dead. Outside, distant screams reminded them why. The next morning, the group pushed on. A radio crackled intermittently with static and faint voices. Could they be rescue teams? Or something worse? Suddenly, the road ahead was blocked by abandoned vehicles, some burned out, others barricaded with makeshift spikes. Harris inspected the barricade. We're not the first to try this route. As they debated how to proceed, a shadow moved, a lone figure with a crossbow appeared, eyes wary but not hostile. I'm Sarah, she said. I've been tracking zombie movements in this area. There's a safer path through the woods. Reluctantly, the group followed Sarah into dense trees, branches clawing at their clothes. The forest was thick with danger. The undead lurked behind every tree, forcing the survivors into silence and slow, careful steps. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed. Jake froze, eyes wide. "Go," Alex urged. "We don't have time." They ran, adrenaline propelling them forward, hearts pounding. At a clearing, they stopped to catch their breath. Jake looked around, shaking. "How long until we get there?" "The safe zone?" Maya's eyes darkened. "Nobody knows. It's just a rumor. But it's all we have." Alex's mind raced. Every step forward was a gamble. Every stranger they met could be friend or foe. But turning back wasn't an option. As night fell, the group made camp in a shallow cave. Maya stood watch, rifle ready. Alex stared into the flames, thoughts heavy. The world they knew was gone. But the fight wasn't over. Not yet. Tomorrow, they'd keep moving. Toward hope, or oblivion. The old military checkpoint stood silent like a forgotten relic from a time before the fall. Its rusted gates hung ajar, the barbed wire sagging and torn. Alex, Maya, Jake, Harris, and Sarah approached cautiously, senses alert for any sign of movement. The air hung heavy with decay and something else, a lingering dread that pressed on their chests like a weight. "We might find supplies here," Harris said, voice low. "Or answers." Alex nodded, stepping through the gate first. The compound was a tangle of broken-down vehicles, empty crates, and toppled sentry towers. A chill wind whispered through the abandoned mess hall, carrying echoes of a past long gone. Inside, the survivors found evidence of a hurried evacuation, maps torn, radios smashed, and a hastily scrawled note pinned to a bulletin board. Containment breach. Experiment failed. Quarantine lost. Alex's pulse quickened. Experiment? What kind of experiment? Maya scanned the surrounding area, eyes sharp. This wasn't just an accident. Something went wrong here. Jake's voice cracked. "Is that what caused all this? The outbreak?" Suddenly, Alex's mind flashed back to the hospital, the sudden patients, the strange symptoms, the hurried orders to quarantine. Something deep inside twisted, a painful memory pushing forward. "I was there," Alex confessed quietly. "I treated some of the first infected. It wasn't natural. It was man-made." The group fell silent. A sharp noise, a metallic clang, echoed from the far end of the compound. Instinctively, the survivors took cover behind an overturned truck. "Is someone there?" Harris whispered. A shadow moved, low and fast. Then, a figure stepped into the dim light, a young woman, gaunt and pale, clutching a makeshift spear. "Wait," Alex said, raising a hand. "We're not here to hurt you." The woman's eyes flickered with suspicion but didn't lower her weapon. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "This place is cursed." Maya exchanged a look with Alex. "We need to know what happened. Why the city fell." The woman hesitated, then nodded slowly. "They called it Project Revival. A secret attempt to create a biological weapon. But it went wrong. The infected, they weren't just sick. They were something else." Alex swallowed hard. The truth was worse than they imagined. As they spoke, the woman, who introduced herself as Lena, revealed that some survivors had tried to contain the outbreak here but failed. The military had sealed the area, cutting off all communication. Suddenly, a growl interrupted them. From the shadows, several infected lurched forward. Chaos erupted. Alex swung the pipe, connecting with a creature's skull. Maya fired her rifle, each shot echoing sharply. Jake struggled but managed to fend off an attacker with a broken metal rod. In the frantic melee, Lena was bitten. "No!" Alex yelled, grabbing her arm. Lena's eyes darkened. "It's too late for me." "Take this," she gasped, pressing a crumpled piece of paper into Alex's hand. "It's the coordinates. To the safe zone. Go. Before it's too late." Tears stung Alex's eyes as Lena collapsed, convulsing and transforming before their eyes into one of the undead. The survivors fought their way out, hearts heavy with loss but determined to carry on. Later, as they rested beneath the shattered canopy of trees, Alex stared at the paper, coordinates scrawled hastily but clearly. "This is our next move," Alex said. "We have to follow it." Maya placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. "We will." For Lena. Jake's voice was steady now, hardened by grief. "No more mistakes. No more hesitation." Alex nodded, the weight of leadership settling like armor. The ghosts of the past would haunt them, but they couldn't let fear win. Because out there, beyond the ruins, beyond the infected, was a chance. A chance to fight back. To reclaim what was lost. To awaken a dead America. The road ahead seemed almost too quiet, as if the world itself held its breath. The survivors had followed Lena's coordinates through winding backroads and overgrown trails, the landscape slowly changing from ruin-strewn wilderness to the outskirts of what looked like civilization. At last, looming on the horizon, walls rose like a scar against the sky, tall, fortified, and guarded. "The safe zone," Alex whispered, heart pounding. But the word felt heavy, loaded with hope and doubt. They approached cautiously, the gates towering over them, reinforced with steel plates and razor wire. Armed sentries patrolled the perimeter, eyes sharp and wary. A gruff voice barked, "Halt! Identify yourselves." Alex stepped forward, hands raised. "We're survivors. We come with information and a desire to join." The guards exchanged looks but made no move to open the gate. A woman emerged from a guard tower, her expression hard, lips pressed in a thin line. "This is a secure military enclave. We don't just let anyone in." Maya spoke firmly. "We have proof the outside is collapsing. We want to help, to survive together." The woman hesitated, then motioned. "Follow me." Inside, the survivors entered a world starkly different from the chaos outside, a heavily fortified town surrounded by watchtowers, trenches, and barbed wire. The streets were eerily orderly, soldiers and civilians moving with purpose. But beneath the surface, tension simmered. "This place is like a fortress," Jake murmured. "But it feels more like a prison." Alex nodded, scanning the faces, wary, exhausted, and suspicious. The woman led them to a large command tent, where a stern man awaited, dressed in military fatigues. "I'm Colonel Reyes," he said sharply. "You understand the rules here? No weapons unless authorized. Curfew at dusk. Everyone submits to quarantine screenings." Alex nodded. "We understand. But what about the rumors? About infected inside the walls?" Reyes's eyes narrowed. "Rumors are dangerous. We have protocols. So far, no breach." The survivors were given food and a place to rest, but the uneasy atmosphere gnawed at them. Over the next days, Alex learned more about life inside the safe zone. It was a delicate balance, strict order in exchange for protection. But many whispered about disappearances, harsh punishments, and a growing paranoia that threatened to tear the community apart. One evening, as Alex walked the perimeter with Maya, a scream cut through the night air. Soldiers rushed past, shouting orders. Alex's heart hammered. "What's happening?" Maya's voice was grim. "They found someone infected. Inside." The news spread fast, panic igniting in eyes that had long forgotten what hope felt like. Reyes called an emergency meeting. "We must root out the infection before it spreads. No one is above suspicion." Alex watched as fear transformed into accusation. Friends turned wary. Eyes darted nervously, searching for signs of betrayal. In the shadows, whispers grew louder. Who could be trusted? Who was hiding the truth? Alex's resolve hardened. This safe zone might be their best chance, but it could also be their undoing. Because sometimes, the dead outside were the least of their worries. The sun had barely risen over the walls of the safe zone when Alex awoke to the sound of hurried footsteps echoing down the corridors. The air was thick with tension, an invisible storm brewing just beneath the surface of this so-called sanctuary. Rumors had become reality, the infection had breached the walls. Colonel Reyes had ordered a lockdown, and the once orderly streets were now flooded with suspicion and fear. Soldiers patrolled with rifles raised, searching homes and questioning residents. Trust had become a luxury no one could afford. Alex, Maya, Jake, and Harris gathered in the cramped room they'd been assigned, the weight of uncertainty heavy on their shoulders. "We can't just wait here," Maya said, loading her rifle with a practiced hand. "If the infection spreads inside, this whole place will fall." Harris nodded grimly. "I've seen what it does. We need to find the source, and fast." Jake clenched his fists. "But how? They're locking everything down. No one moves without orders." Alex's mind raced. The safe zone was supposed to be a refuge, but now it felt like a trap. Just then, a loud banging came from the door. "Open up," a soldier shouted. The door burst open, and a young woman stumbled inside, her face pale and streaked with dirt. "It's the North Block," she gasped. "They're infected, people turning in their sleep." Maya grabbed her rifle. "We have to help." As the group hurried through the dimly lit corridors, the stench of decay grew stronger. The North Block, once a dormitory for families, was now a nightmare come to life. Inside, terrified residents barricaded themselves in rooms, whispering prayers and sobbing quietly. Suddenly, an infected lunged from the shadows, eyes burning with hunger. Maya fired, and the creature collapsed with a guttural groan. More appeared, shambling through the halls, their moans echoing off the walls. The survivors fought fiercely, but the infection was relentless. Amidst the chaos, Alex caught sight of a figure slipping away, someone familiar, someone trusted. "Wait," Alex called, chasing after the shadow. In a narrow hallway, the figure turned. It was Harris. "What are you doing?" Alex demanded. Harris's face was desperate. "I had no choice. They made me." "Made you?" "Who?" "Some of the commanders. They're hiding things. Using the infection for experiments, trying to control it." Alex's blood ran cold. The enemy wasn't just outside the walls, it was inside. They returned to Maya and Jake, breathless and shaken. "We have to expose this," Alex said. "Before it's too late." But the command tent was locked down, guarded by soldiers loyal only to Reyes. The survivors had to be careful. As night fell, they met in secret, planning to gather evidence and warn the community. But the safe zone's shadows were deep, and betrayal lurked in every corner. When a sudden alarm blared, the survivors were caught off guard, soldiers storming their hideout. "You're under arrest for conspiracy and endangering the community," Reyes's voice boomed. Alex's heart pounded. The fight for survival had become a fight for truth, and for their lives. The cold metal cuffs bit into Alex's wrists as soldiers dragged them through the dim corridors of the safe zone's command center. Maya, Jake, and Harris were restrained as well, faces tight with a mix of fear and determination. Colonel Reyes stood before them, expression as hard and unyielding as the walls surrounding them. "You brought chaos to this place. You threaten lives with your baseless accusations." Alex met his gaze without flinching. "We know the truth, Reyes. You're using the infection as a weapon. People are dying because of it." Reyes's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, the facade cracked, fear, anger, something darker flickering beneath. "You don't understand the sacrifices I've made." Maya spat back, "Sacrifices? You're sacrificing innocent people." Before Reyes could reply, the facility's alarm blared again, this time signaling a breach. The infected had found a way inside, swarming through service tunnels and ventilation shafts. Panic erupted. Soldiers scrambled to their posts, guns firing into the shadows. Seeing the chaos, the prisoners exchanged a quick, unspoken agreement. This was their chance. With a sharp kick from Jake, the door to their holding cell burst open. "We move now," Alex commanded. They sprinted down narrow passageways, dodging panicked soldiers and groaning undead. The safe zone was no longer sanctuary, it was a prison on the verge of collapse. As they emerged into a storage bay, crates and equipment provided cover. Maya raised her rifle, picking off infected that shuffled into view. Through the maintenance tunnels, Harris urged, "There's an exit near the old bridge." The group navigated the claustrophobic tunnels, the stench of rot thick in the air. Every corner held danger, decayed hands clawing, hungry snarls echoing. When they finally burst into the open air, the night sky stretched endlessly above. But their escape wasn't over. Reyes's voice crackled over a radio, "You won't get far. The safe zone belongs to us." Jake looked at Alex. "What now?" Alex's eyes burned with resolve. "We find allies. We expose Reyes. And we end this nightmare." The survivors moved swiftly, disappearing into the shadows beyond the walls. Behind them, the safe zone trembled, a fortress fractured from within. The dead outside weren't the only threat. The real battle was just beginning. 795 words. Would you like me to continue with part 7? The night air was thick with the scent of smoke and decay as Alex, Maya, Jake, and Harris moved silently through the shattered remnants of what had once been a bustling town. The safe zone's walls faded behind them like a bad memory, replaced by the eerie quiet of a world gone mad. Their plan was simple yet desperate: find other survivors willing to stand against Colonel Reyes and the corruption festering inside the enclave. They reached an abandoned radio tower perched on a hill, its skeletal frame silhouetted against the moonlit sky. Alex pulled out the cracked walkie-talkie Lena had given them, hoping for a signal. Static hissed, then a faint voice broke through. "This is Echo Station. Survivors, respond." Alex's heart surged. "This is Alex. We're looking for allies. The safe zone isn't safe." A crackling pause, then, "We've been watching. We know Reyes isn't who he says he is." Relief flooded through the group. They arranged to meet at an old church on the edge of town. As dawn painted the sky with shades of blood red, they arrived at the meeting place. Shadows moved, people, armed and wary, stepping out from hiding. Among them was a tall man with a scar across his cheek, a woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. "We're the resistance," the man said. "We've been fighting Reyes' tyranny from the inside." Maya scanned the group, noting their weapons, their hardened faces. "Why fight from the shadows?" Alex asked. "Because open rebellion means death," the woman replied. "Reyes controls the soldiers, the supplies. But he's weak. We've got information, weapons, and most importantly, people who want freedom." The survivors shared what they had learned: the experiments, the infection inside the walls, the betrayals. Plans formed quickly, born of necessity and desperation. But as they strategized, Jake caught sight of a familiar figure watching from the shadows, Lena's brother, a man hardened by loss and survival. "Who's that?" Jake asked quietly. Alex's expression darkened. "Someone with a score to settle." Trust was fragile, and the past refused to stay buried. That night, under a canopy of stars, the new allies prepared for a battle that would decide not just their fate, but the fate of every soul trapped in dead America. Because the fight for survival was no longer just against the dead. It was against the living who had forgotten what it meant to be human. 795 words. Ready for part 8, the thrilling conclusion? The air was thick with tension as dawn crept over the horizon, casting pale light on the ragged band of survivors gathered in the ruins of the church. Faces once weary now burned with determination. Alex, Maya, Jake, Harris, and the resistance fighters stood united, ready to take back what had been stolen. The plan was clear: infiltrate the safe zone's command center, expose Colonel Reyes' crimes, and dismantle the corrupt regime from within. Weapons were checked, whispers of encouragement passed between them, but none dared speak of what awaited beyond the walls. As they moved toward the safe zone, the land was eerily silent, the calm before the storm. Once inside the perimeter, the group split. Maya and Jake created a diversion by setting fires along the outer barracks, drawing guards away. Alex, Harris, and the Resistance's leader, Marcus, slipped through ventilation shafts and back corridors toward the command tent. Inside, Reyes sat behind a desk cluttered with maps and files, his expression cold and calculating. Soldiers flanked him, but the element of surprise was on their side. Alex burst into the room, gun drawn. "It's over, Reyes. We have proof of your experiments and cover-ups." Reyes laughed, dark and bitter. "You think you can change the world with a few papers? This place was built on control. Fear is the only way to survive." Suddenly, alarms blared. Maya's diversion had reached the soldiers' ears, chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed, screams filled the halls. Reyes lunged for a sidearm, but Harris tackled him, pinning him to the ground. Alex seized the files, exposing the experiments, the quarantine violations, the human cost. The soldiers hesitated, then lowered their weapons, the truth breaking their loyalty like a shattered mirror. Outside, the fires raged, a signal that the old order was burning down. The survivors rallied the safe zone's people, urging them to reclaim their home, not as prisoners, but as free humans. As the sun rose higher, the infected outside howled, but inside, a new hope was born. Alex looked at the faces around them, scarred, tired, but alive. "Dead America may have fallen," Alex said, voice steady, "but humanity fights on. The battle wasn't over. Not yet." But for the first time in a long time, there was light in the darkness. And that was enough. 795 words. That completes the full 8-part story outline and narrative for Dead America Awakens, When the Cities Fell and Humanity Fought Back, a suspenseful, engaging zombies versus humans audiobook story crafted for YouTube monetization safety. If you want, I can help with any adjustments or create scripts or dialogue based on this story.